This week on LTC News, how green is Lowell?
The City of Lowell has made significant investments in energy efficiency and in renewable energy.
Dancers hit the streets.
They wanted to centralize dancers in the Lowell area.
And a preview of Kids Week.
Fun and free activities throughout the entire city of Lowell.
Stay with us. Welcome to LTC News. I'm your news anchor, Alanna Flood. On February 1st, environmentally concerned Lowellians gathered to discuss sustainability, climate change, clean energy, and other issues surrounding the adoption of sustainable practices on a state, local, and individual level.
Well, sustainability means that we don't take more of the resources out of the environment than we put back in.
We need to stop the burning of fossil fuels as soon as humanly possible to start slowing the effects of climate change. It's a lag effect. It's going to take a long, long time for us to reverse.
There's actually a lot that the legislature is not doing that we would like them to do, so that's a big part of our work right now, is actually to try to get some new legislation in place throughout the state that will encourage more clean energy.
The City of Lowell has made significant investments in energy efficiency and in renewable energy.
Lowell was one of the first cities in the state to be designated as a green community. Catherine Moses, energy manager for the City of Lowell, presented facts and figures on some of Lowell's successful energy-saving programs.
There were a total of 28 energy conservation measures that were applied to 48 different city buildings. And between that and all the other steps that we've taken to incrementally change what we're doing, since 2008, which was our baseline year, we have reduced our energy use by 16.3%. We've also reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by 30.52% in that time.
Lowell uses solar panels on 4 schools, at the water and the wastewater department buildings, the auditorium, and some landfills, which represent significant savings to the city.
They have generated a total of 39.7 million kilowatt hours, saving the city $1.4 million in avoided energy costs.
City Councilor Karen Cirillo recently put forward 3 motions to reduce the use of single-use plastic bags, to provide free grocery bags for the poor and elderly, and to reduce the use of styrofoam.
Following in the footsteps of Boston and 59 other cities and towns in Massachusetts now have bans on plastic bags. Like I said, this is not in my motion. This is not a complete ban on plastic bags. It's just for certain stores of a certain size, because I don't necessarily want to hurt the mom and pop stores that currently use plastic bags. So it's not a 100% ban on plastic bags.
Basically, plastics are not biodegradable. They'll be with us forever.
Plastic bags are an enormous problem, and we need to recycle and consider the path of the materials that we use and the resources that we expend.
I've heard critics say that everything we make in some way is harmful to the environment. And so, my response is that we have to learn how to make things differently and do things differently.
The 3 motions were rolled into one motion to reduce plastic waste, and that motion was referred to a new environmental subcommittee for fact gathering and study.
This is an opportunity to have a discussion on a matter like this, and I think that we should take the opportunity to do that. And there's, maybe we aren't Cambridge, but we're Lowell, and it still means that we can do these types of things. We don't have to be Cambridge or Brookline or any of the other, 60 communities that have already taken action on plastic bags in order to do this. We can do it, and we should at least take the opportunity to discuss it.
The next step is to debate it, to study it by the subcommittee.
Having an environmental subcommittee is exactly what we need. We need to have a reflective and measured response to these things so that we do understand both the benefits and the implications. Every time we pass a resolution or a bill or a motion, we need to consider the effect it's going to have on our community. That is also part of the definition of sustainability.
I will do my best to assist in what you're trying to do. The entire, as far as I'm concerned, the entire City Council is ready to do that. They're thinking in those terms.
With City Council support, we can expect that Lowell will continue to stay on track with its sustainability initiatives. And now, Richard Howe, Lowell's Registrar of Deeds and renowned Lowell blogger, returns with his City Council Synopsis.
Hi, I'm Richard Howe with your LTC Lowell City Council Synopsis for the meetings of January 30th and February 6th, 2018. The January 30th City Council meeting was dominated by a discussion of a privately owned college dormitory that has been proposed for the former Jeanne d'Arc Credit Union site at the corner of Merrimack, Cabot, and Market Streets in the Acre. This would be Lowell's second privately owned dormitory. The first, Edge Merrimack River, opened last September on Father Morissette Boulevard across the street from Lowell High School. This new project would construct a 6-story building with 163 separate units containing a total of 466 beds. While it is the planning board that will ultimately rule on this project, councilors were anxious to share their opinions. Several spoke strongly against the project, objecting primarily to the low number of parking spaces proposed for a big development in an already densely settled neighborhood. Also speaking against the project was Patricia Coffey, who was there representing UMass Lowell. She said that there is not the demand for additional dormitory beds in Lowell. As evidence of that, she cited the difficulty the Edge project is having in attracting tenants, and added that even UMass Lowell is filling fewer dormitory beds than projected because fewer students are able to afford the cost. There will be more discussion on this in the Sunspot segment later in this program. Now, also at this meeting, councilors discussed vacant and abandoned buildings and what to do with them. At a previous council meeting, representatives from Attorney General Maura Healey's office briefed councilors on a new program that teams up lawyers from the AG's office with city inspectors to get abandoned homes in Centerville repaired through the receivership process. Councilors uniformly praised this effort and now hope to do something similar in Lowell's other neighborhoods. The February 6th council meeting was dominated by a discussion on the new Lowell High project. Initiated by a motion from Councilor John Leahy for a report on the recent meeting between the city and the Massachusetts School Building Authority, the debate became heated, with several councilors criticizing the coverage of the meeting by the Lowell Sun. Councilor Ed Kennedy said that the newspaper's willingness to distort the truth because of the bias of its editor is not fair to the community. Several councilors were also critical of the consultants hired by the city for this project and of the city manager's office, with Councilor Jim Milanazzo stating that he had lost faith in the Murphy administration. The message from all councilors was that the high school project should proceed expeditiously with greater attention to detail and better communication with councilors and the public. Finally, the council endorsed a request for proposals for a new management team for the Lowell Memorial Auditorium. The contract would be for 5 years. Councilors all expressed their hope that the number and quality of performances held at the auditorium in the coming years will be better than what we've seen recently. That's it for this week's Lowell City Council Synopsis. I'm Richard Howe. Thanks for joining us.
When kids are out of school in February, it can be a challenge to keep them busy. Thankfully, there's Lowell Kids Week. This year, it starts on February 19th. Organizations throughout the city join together to offer activities that are open to all Lowell kids and their families, from weaving to winter walks in the woods. Lowell National Historical Park coordinates the week of activities.
It is an entire week full of fun and free activities throughout the entire city of Lowell. Lowell Kids Week activities are open to everyone, all families, caretakers, children as young as 5, sometimes even younger, and as old as high school students. We have about 40 programs that we will be offering this year. Bingo with your grandparents. There is puffy paint. We have weaving workshops and actually weave a piece of cloth. super skeletal systems, design their own magical mechanical hand, build a city, the scavenger hunts done by Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust, zine making activities, design your own blueprints of your ideal space, so a junior parkitect activity, and lots more. And plan out your day, make sure that if it requires registration, you do it as soon as possible.
The full schedule is available at the Park Visitor Center on Market Street and online at lowellkidsweek.org. Mill-Advise is an urban dance crew that grew out of a team program at Lowell Community Health Center. They were formed partly to encourage young people to express themselves through dance. Not only do they practice and perform, they have also created a YouTube channel to document their steps along the way.
Mill-Advise was established in 2016. Basically, there were 4 choreographers, directors that came together doing various crews, and they wanted to centralize dancers in the Lowell area. When it comes to dance, people in this area, they think of Boston. So, they formed a group and held auditions for dancers to come around and participate, and really wanted to take the group to in a direction where we could perform, compete, put out quality content on YouTube, and really kind of put Lowell on the map when it comes to the dance community. We really wanted to display, the different talents that Lowell has. I feel like the dancers we have right now are committed. Some of them are on the younger side, but they're showing a lot of interest and a lot of commitment, a lot of heart when it comes to what we're throwing at them.
Our ultimate goal is to just have a very permanent sense of a group.
I like the fact that it is a community thing, so you get involved with other people. It's not a solo thing. I mean, you can be a solo dancer, but that's not the part of dance that is fun. It's important to communicate with others, like feel the energy and the vibe and learn from each other. It's the cool thing about dancing.
Being able to come into a group where there's also other people who love dance in the same way and are passionate and improve, not only with themselves in the sense of just dance, but individually when it comes to like fitness, their well-being, health, all those things. So that is what I like mostly about dance, and especially the dance community, where everybody kind of has a love for everybody else, like they appreciate what you bring to the table, they appreciate your artistry.
Grow as a dancer, learn how to choreograph, and have fun.
I hope to gain a lot more friends, get better at choreographing, improve my dancing, because right now I'm not happy with it, and also gain friends. Your boy Lowell.
The YouTube portion of Mill-Advise is really to, again, bring attention to our group. We want to put out, quality content that people can see and can be inspired by.
We still put out very quality content, so it's definitely passion driven, not necessarily subscriber driven in that sense.
So YouTube kind of is our outlet to that. I hope that Mill-Advise can continue to grow. I'd like to see people to look at Mill-Advise and say, wow, that's a really competitive dance group, and they're like a family, and they're organized and really passionate about dance.
The dancers meet every Monday and Wednesday night at Planet Dance on Stedman Street in Lowell. Winterfest is a much-anticipated outdoor festival that happens each year in February. There's something for all ages. Toby Marks, Special Events Coordinator for Lowell, gives us a preview of what to expect this year.
So Winterfest is like a long Lowell tradition, happening now for 20 years, I think. This year is going to be super exciting. So we're continuing what we started last year. So we have Winterfest on 2 footprints right here behind me on JFK Plaza and just right down the road on Lucy Larkin Park. 2 distinct locations, both with activities, music, kids, games, a big merry-go-round and a lot of different things. I think one of the most exciting things will be that right here behind me, one of the big tents will be what we call the Lodge. And then we'll have a stage in it. 2 great bands will play Friday night and Saturday night. Friday night we have the Joshua Tree cover band, which is like a U2 cover band. Saturday nights we have Hell Holiday and the Tones. And I think it's going to be a great time. In the tent on Saturday from 12 to 4 will be kids entertainment with like a clown, balloons, face painting, magic show, sing-alongs, the whole thing. And I think one of the highlights this year as well for kids is that we actually expand on the ice rink from last year. So we have an ice rink right here set up with ice rentals and it's all free. St. Anne's Church right down the street is doing this chocolate festival for the last 10 years, I think. They're doing this chocolate festival, which is super popular. It's $7 a ticket and brings almost a couple thousand, like at least 2,000 people to come to that. But if you're a soup fanatic, you should come Saturday from 12 to 4, or 12 to 3 actually, right over there in the Masonic Center, where you can participate in the Dick Rogue soup competition. We have about 12 restaurants that are serving a soup and you can try them all, and then we crown the winner, which is fun. And we're starting to kick it off Friday at 5 p.m. and it goes until about 11 p.m. And on Saturday the activities start again at noon and go until 11 p.m. at night. The slogan is Don't Hibernate, Celebrate. So really we want people to take a break from the winter, come out, have a lot of fun, bring their kids, bring their families, and just have a jolly good time.
Hopefully the weather will cooperate because there's no alternate date in case of extreme weather. In this week's Sunspot, Lowell Sun Enterprise editor Chris Scott sits down with Steve Joncas on behalf of the Jeanne d'Arc Credit Union to talk about the proposal for private student dorms on Merrimack Street.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Scott, the Enterprise Editor at The Sun. It's good to be back for another edition of Sunspot. With me today is Steve Joncas. Steve Joncas is a Lowell resident, and he's the real estate consultant for Jeanne d'Arc Credit Union as it works to redevelop the property it owns on Upper Merrimack Street at the intersection with... Cabot. I always forget that Cabot Street. Steve, thanks for coming in today.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it. It was on short notice. I was just hoping you could bring us up to speed a little bit of the history of the site and when Jeanne d'Arc pretty much stopped banking operations there, and then we can get into a little bit about why the site is again in the news this week.
Well, sure. Well, as you know, the Jeanne d'Arc Credit Union started at that location over 100 years ago, and it came to the conclusion that its existing facilities were needed to be upgraded. Mm-hmm. And at the time, we were working with Lowell Community Health Center, who owned 2 buildings on Merrimack Street. And,
I remember that.
They were looking to consolidate and expand on Jackson Street. So the health center reached out to the credit union about whether or not there would be any interest in purchasing that property in order to upgrade their own facilities, and of course they did, which was a big help to the health center in assembling the capital that they needed to pursue that development. And the health center, the credit union made a substantial investment in that new building on Merrimack Street. Of course, that made the property on Cabot and Merrimack and Market Street surplus. And at the time, the property was bonded by the Club de Citoyen, whose membership were having difficulty supporting the real estate and the club's future. They too approached the credit union and asked if there would be interest on their part in acquiring that site. And the credit union decided to do so for 2 reasons. One, it wanted to assist the club because they do have a significant community spirit. And 2, because it helped to round off their site.
How many square feet is that site now?
Well, let me just go to one more acquisition, and you may recall the White Eagle. The White Eagle was
Next to
located, yes, adjacent to their property, and it had a for sale sign on it. So the credit union worked with Jim Cook and the Lowell plan to acquire that property, and it has since been torn down. And the reason for dealing with that is the overall feeling was that it didn't really add to the neighborhood, that the bar was older, and the units upstairs were substandard, and as it turns out, in the demolition they found some contamination that was cleaned up as well. So the notion behind all of this was to assess how could a parcel of land that is almost an acre in size, at a very critical intersection of the Upper Merrimack Street neighborhood be developed. More or less at the same time, the Federal Reserve Bank announced that they were having another round of working cities opportunities, the challenge to have communities identify low and moderate income neighborhoods and look to how residents could be empowered so that ideas on how to change the neighborhood and benefit the people who live there would come from the grassroots up as opposed to the top down. And the credit union, along with the Greater Lowell Community Foundation and the city, supported that effort initially financially, which I think helped with the designation. So now, and why was that? There's some 1,100 units in the designated area that are owned either by the Housing Authority or the Coalition for a Better Acre. The poverty levels in that neighborhood are fairly significant, and it was designated because it was felt that that's where we could really have an impact if we could bring the various institutions together to collaborate, to look at how they could utilize resources in a way that would be more effective by collaborating to address community needs.
Please bear with me. I need to just interject here because we are limited on time. So I know that that once the properties were acquired, the credit union thought of several ideas for reuse. Tell me what some of those ideas were.
I will.
And why they were rejected, and then we can talk about the dorm.
So in 2014, it actually issued this request for expressions of interest, which includes a description of the property and the zoning and other information. And very little came about as a result of that. One proposal did come forward that we had some hope for, and that was to work with a developer who had contacts with both CVS and Walgreens. And the thinking was that the neighborhood could benefit if that kind of a facility, I think that kind of a use was located on that property. But they turned it down. Walgreens' response was that they had just opened up on Middlesex Street and they weren't really interested in expanding in the market at this point. CVS felt that their store on Bridge Street and downtown served the market, and this would cannibalize those two operations. So that fell apart. Another proposed a auto parts store and a discount dollar store. It was felt that that wouldn't really benefit the neighborhood. Certainly it might offer products at a price range that would be affordable, but would they really generate economic activity in the neighborhood? Would they create significant numbers of jobs? And for other reasons, the credit union decided that that wouldn't work out either.
And we talked off air about a gasoline station at one point?
There was someone who proposed a gas station and convenience store, and that was discounted almost immediately because it was felt that the traffic impacts of that, and again, the lack of real economic benefit wasn't consistent with the goals of Working Cities Challenge, wasn't really consistent with the goals of the neighborhood organizations wasn't really going to be consistent with what the city would want to see.
So we've established the fact that there were several proposals. The credit union didn't think any of them were conducive to neighborhood redevelopment.
There was one more idea, and that was whether or not it would make sense to develop subsidized housing there. So, and that took considerable thought. And we came to the conclusion that both the Coalition for a Better Acre, now at Lowell House, looking to develop 28 units, and the Housing Authority, who has created something called Renew, a nonprofit, excuse me, a nonprofit organization that they want to utilize to develop affordable housing for veterans and families around the Mercier Center. Those two organizations are looking for the same resources from the state. And trust me, I know this for a fact, those resources are extremely competitive. Securing those is very difficult to do, and it can often take 2, 3, even 4 years to do it.
We've actually had Gary Wallace here talking about that.
Okay. So we didn't want to compete on that front, and along came this proposal for student housing. So,
and we only have a few minutes left, so we need to.
So why student housing? It was felt that student housing would result in bringing in people with disposable income,
which the city has always wanted,
and it would serve as a connection consistent with the master plan that the city has between University Crossing and their east and north campus and the downtown to facilitate the links between those two parts of our community. And it was felt that those people with disposable incomes could support the existing businesses as well as those that everyone on the city council and in the DPD and in the neighborhood wants to see additional retail developed. So additional retail developed could compete with the existing retail, and there's a law of unintended consequences. Or it could benefit from the fact that you'd have over 400 students there.
So we've had, the credit union has put forward one dorm proposal that was rejected by the neighborhood and by the city. It's come back with another proposal, which has not been warmly received.
So
why do you think that is?
It's not the credit union that's proposing this. The party that's proposing it.
We only have 2 minutes.
Is WFI, and the neighborhood has opposed it. Principally, the university is opposing it. It may be because they feel that it offers competition for their own on-site housing. Some in the neighborhood have opposed it as well because they felt that it lacks sufficient parking. And the developers now are working on trying to put together a parking solution that not only satisfies the planning board, but satisfies the neighborhood and the needs that will be generated by projects like the CBAs and the housing authorities.
Now, it was before the planning board on Monday night. It's coming back for a public hearing. Is that correct?
Right now, it's been advertised for a public hearing on the 22nd, which is a Thursday.
What do you think the future has in store for this particular proposal as it stands right now, based on what you saw on Monday night?
I think it's at a critical stage. The question is, will the $500,000 in building permit fees, will the $250,000 to $300,000 in property taxes, will the parking solution, whatever it may be, address community needs, and will the notion that while some may feel that student housing doesn't represent perfection, others may feel that it represents something that would add to the neighborhood, not detract from it, and add to it by bringing in disposable income, add to it by addressing a vacant lot where other uses have been proposed that would not be beneficial, and help secure the future of that neighborhood.
Well, Steve, we're going to have you back here in maybe a week or two or to talk about how that public hearing goes. I know 12 minutes isn't a long time to really get into it, but I appreciate you coming in.
That's it for this edition of LTC News. You can find us on LTC channels 8 and 99, online at ltc.org, on Roku at LTC Lowell, or get the link on Facebook. I'm Alanna Flood. Thank you for joining us.